Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Ankush here from Alif Consulting. Welcome in our centralized identity management case study. In this case study, we will be going to talk about uh, one of our customer who have basically done a centralization of their identity by using the Azure Active Directory and Active Directory domain services, which allow them to solve the multiple problems which they were actually having when they are running the Active Directory domain services on the VM, right? So in this specific video, we will be going to have a customer introduction. We're going to understand what are the business challenges customer was having, what are the centralized identity solution looks like, what is the design, what are how the implementation happened, what are the solution principle were there, and what are the final results customer get once they started using the Azure AD and Active Directory domain services both as a centralized identity management, right? So let's quickly jump into the customer introduction and understand what this customer is. So this customer is a global service provider providing engineering, architecture, designing, planning, project management, and consulting services across the 40 offices across the multiple countries. This customer have more than 10K internal users and the external users on the Active Directory domain services. Keep in mind the all the users which they do have an internal user, they do have external users, and all of them were on the Active Directory domain services only. And they want all of those users to move on the cloud because with the Active Directory they were not having a lot of features like the MFA, conditional access management, password, self password reset kind of thing. So that's the reason they want to move into the cloud. Customer have selected the Azure Active Directory for the migration and the centralized identity management system. Now, what are the businesses challenges which customer were having? So they're having a password problem because their external users are setting up the simple password, and there is a no way of stop all of those users. Managing a password is too complex with the current setup. Seamless security. They were not having a seamless securities with their current solution like SSO single sign-on for external users were having a multiple account to access or management of the application. There's a no two-factor authentication with the current solution. They were not having any kind of two-factor authentication to validate the user password and session. Password reset is a very biggest problem for them because if external user need to reset the password, they need to raise a support case to reset the password, which ultimately increase the life cycle of the service request management. Identity protection, they were not having any kind of identity protections solution like risk sign in risk, conditional access, offline credential thief, access review kind of things, right? So those kind of identity protection was not there for the customer. They just simply using the LDAP to do the authentication using the Active Directory domain services. Now, how their centralized identity solution look like? So as current solution and the infrastructure is getting end of the life on the on-premise data center, customer have finalized the Azure Active Directory for centralized identity management to move all on-premise B2B accounts while taking the advantage of lifecycle management. Azure AD provides a ready-made solution to their provisioning problem, like natively B2B for legacy application solution developed by customer, giving them a B2B benefit for on-premise application and get a full life cycle management. So these kind of benefit they are getting it because ultimately if they're using Azure AD, they can simply integrate that Azure AD with any of the application, right? Either that application is running on on-premise, either that application is running on Azure, either that application is a SaaS application, right? So Azure AD provide them a simple B2B integration with any of the application wherever you are running it, and that's where customer is basically getting the advantage because they don't need to worry about the identity. The single identity can be used across the multiple application wherever they are hosted. Either they are hosted on a VM, either they are hosted on on-premise, either that is a hosted on the PaaS solution, that is either that is hosted on a SaaS solution, right? A part of that, by using the Active Directory domain services, they're getting a lot more other features. They're getting the conditional access, they're getting the MFA, they're getting the access review, they're getting the privileged identity management, right? Kind of things they're getting with the Azure Active Directory, which was eventually not there when they were using the Active Directory domain services. With this centralized identity solution, customer have gain productivity, increase their security, reduce the overall cost, and greater workplace efficiency, and more. Uh, they are getting it once they are choose the Azure AD. So these are the things which they get as soon as they started using the Azure AD as a centralized identity solution. Now this is how the solution look like. So they were having, as I told you, they were completely moved on to the Azure ready. So they were having their integration with all the SaaS applications, Azure applications, Office 365, or any other public cloud application, or the on-premise application. At the same time, they were having some of the application running on the on-premise, where they have integrated integration with Azure Active Directory, because with the Azure Active Directory you no need to worry about uh, any kind of high availability, because Active Directory built in a way it's always highly available, right? And then on-prem, all the IT administrator, right, the person who is sitting on the on-premise can manage identity, can implement it, right? At the same time, all the users devices, they can get authenticated with Azure AD for authentication and authorization, and the access control on the application. At the same time, user the this organization is does not worried about giving the access to the application, because what they can do, they can simply have created a multiple groups. In that multiple groups, they have assigned the applications, and if any users need to give the multiple access on the multiple application, admin can go ahead and add them into the security groups. As soon as they were added into the security group, they can simply get the access of all the application which is configured, where the security group is configured as a permission. So that's how they are leveraging the Azure Active Directory. At the same time, this Azure Active Directory, they were using with file server, they were using it with the Windows Server Active Directory as well, and then further extension they were continuously doing within the application. Let's talk about how the implementation is happened. So today customer have fully covered with MFA, and 100% application integration is done with the Azure AD. So whatever the application they were using internally or externally, all of those application is now fully integrated with the Azure AD. They were using, or they are using Azure AD to do the integration, providing the single sign-on, right? And then at the same time, they were using the MFA from Azure AD to have the authentication and authorization validation. The customer have currently connected all their SaaS applications with Azure AD and got the benefit like enhanced security, improved productivity, reduced IT cost, and improved IT efficiency. So these are the benefits they start getting as soon as they started using the Azure AD. Now, all the external users can leverage both cloud and legacy application with centralized authentication throughout the Azure AD. So earlier, all the external user need to manage their multiple use account to access the application. Now they have a single identity, single username, password in with MFA across the board, and they can access any kind of applications. Customer have also adopted a new feature of Azure AD privileged identity management, which is used to manage or given the access on a specific resource for the specific time. It's kind of identity access management solution, enabling them to provide the Azure ready roles to the team, easily adding or retiring the roles as a user change the team. With this feature, all the all the roles which is not required, right, or all the inherited roles that user have retained over the year will now gone. So all the rules which customer does not require, right, all the rules which has been inherited from the other rules now simply has been removed. Any admin, right, any admin or any administrator in the team, if they need to access the Azure AD, they need to come on the PIM, they need to request for the access, someone is approving within the team, and then only the user can get the access, which is giving them a enhance security, how they are managing or running their Azure Active Directory, right? Another thing is with PIM, right? So as soon as any user or any team members is moving between one team to another team, they can simply go ahead and remove their roles directly from the PIM. They don't need to uh, give or go ahead and exercise across the board to remove the access from all the application. Simply PIM can remove their access on the application and on the Azure resources. Now, what are the design principle, or I would say a solution principle, when we have designed a solution, or when Active Directory services, which is Azure Active Directory, was configured for this customer? So first of all, one of the design principle was having the self password reset. This is a very important stuff, because earlier all the external users, since this organization is basically giving the services to all the external user also, there were plenty of external user who was using Azure Active Directory domain services, right? And what they need to do, they need to log a support case to reset the password, which eventually lost the productivity, which eventually lost the revenue also. So what we did, we enabled this self password reset. That is something where user uh, is no need to log a support case with team, right? They can simply go on the self password reset. They can reset the password, and as soon as password is resetted, it can replicate across the board. Another design principle, or the solution principle, which was their seamless security. So the earlier they were using the Azure Active Directory domain services, and Azure Active Directory domain service was not providing them a seamless security, right? Now customer have integrated Azure Ready across the board for legacy and SaaS application, and they are taking the advantage of Azure Ready single sign-on for all the application. Which means if a user is already signed into the one application, they don't need to go ahead and log in again into the another application, right? The single sign-on which is already done or completed can run multiple application. Another solution principle was there is multi-factor authentication. Now Azure AD does not have a capability to give you the MFA, right? You do have a capability to integrate the MFA with Active Directory domain services by using the another solution. But that's where more admin overhead come in, because if you're adding any other solution, you need to invest more money, you need to manage that, right? But with Azure AD, you get a two types of MFA. You get uh, app based authentication, which is called Microsoft Authenticator, and we get call based, or we get OTP based authentication, right? So app based authentication is free of cost, and call based and OTP based authentication is paid. However, this customer was already using the P2 licenses for some of the users, right? So that's where they get the MFA authentication enabled across the board for all their users. The fourth solution principle which was there is the identity protection. With Azure AD, customer have implemented identity protections like sign-in risks, conditional access, and offline credential thief. So these are the solution principle was there when we have designed or implement this whole centralized identity management solution. Now what was the final result, right? So customer have seen l- like their Azure AD investment in form of a massive drop into the overhead, massive drop into how their users are signing in, massive drop into the sign in risk, massive drop into the leaking the credentials, right? Tasks that identity and access management team formerly had to go through with the on-premise system, such as a password reset, lifecycle management, and disablement, now can done into in a friction of time with Azure Active Directory, right? So earlier they were logging into the Azure AD, they are finding the user, they are removing it from the groups, right? They are doing the password reset, right? But now everything has been user centric, right? So if any user is need to remove, or if they want to remove their self from the specific group or from the specific permission, simply they can use Azure AD or my account portal, and from there they can remove their access from any of the group if they no longer want to be part of that group. right? And the application onboarding experience is much easier, and make life easier for customer means they can spend more time with integrating and utilizing the new technology. Company have also enjoyed the security benefit of Azure AD, having significant risk reductions of the identity compromise. Partner now enjoying a frictionless onboarding experience when collaborating with customer, whether accessing the SaaS application or on-premise application. So as soon as they have completely moved into Azure, so right, so they now have a full control on how they want to manage their password policy, right? How they want to allow user to sign in, what kind of MFA or on which user they want to enable the MFA, right? How or which kind of application they want to allow users to access, right? All the users, all the application is now integrated with Azure Read. So they have a centralized identity management where from a single portal they can manage their whole Active Directory domain services or identity for all the users, either it's internal or either it's the external user. Well, that's it in this case study. I hope you like this video. If you like, please click on like and subscribe for more upcoming videos, and feel free to reach us if you have any questions. Thank you.